Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the last webinar of the year. Today's topic is very, very interesting. Pause I see you leading in humanizing. So we have two eminent speakers on the panel today, one from Malaysia and one from Singapore, Zahira Sughra Zainuddin and Taruna Aggarwal. Zahira is head special group projects Petronas based in Malaysia. So anybody who knows about Malaysia knows what Petronas is. Yeah. So Zahira, just to tell you where I used to stay in Malaysia, I could see actually Petronas from my windows.
Ah, that's nice.
Yes. Zahira is a chemical engineer by education and has an extensive corporate background with various roles in diverse Petronas businesses throughout her career. She has a vast experience and exposure to global working culture, and she believes that embracing diversity, being inclusive, and committed to making a difference, these are the key levers for sustainability of any organization. She is passionate about humanizing the workplace, and so is today's topic of discussion, leading in humanizing. Our second panelist today, Taruna Aggarwal. She is based out of Singapore and is an ICF PCC coach with more than 500 hours of coaching experience and overall experience of 20 years as an HR and leadership development professional. Taruna is passionate about working with women leaders, women at the workplace, and women entrepreneurs, focuses on building a coaching culture in the education sector. She also hosts a talk show. It's a very interesting talk show which she hosts. If you have time, do go and watch it on YouTube. It's Wide Angle Conversations, wherein she interviews inspiring women and hopes to ignite change, enable success in others through this initiative. In addition, she also carries a passion for research and she has led a coaching research study across 6 markets in Asia by APAC. So with this, over to you, Zahira and Taruna.
Great. Thank you so much, Aishwarya. Let me just get my slides.
Yeah, thank you, Aishwarya, for that introduction. Very kind words.
Yeah. Okay. So hi, everyone. First of all, yeah, thank you so much, Aishwarya, for inviting me here. And also it's exciting to share this session with Taruna. I know two ladies who are very passionate about coaching, and I guess that's how we all got connected. It's that love for coaching that I guess has brought me here today. I guess for those who do know, and Aishwarya, you said it in the introduction, topic that really resonates with me. I do actively try and promote it, and I try and advocate it in the various opportunities that I do get. And maybe perhaps, just to give you a bit of context why it is something I enjoy working on. Maybe I want to share a little story, and I know you've introduced me as somebody who is working in Petronas, and it is, for those who do know it, yes, it is the energy industry, and I have been working there for a very long time, 20 years, and the business side of things, and I've had the opportunities to be involved in many aspects of the business, and it has allowed me to grow professionally. But I do want to share, the story that I want to share is really the stint that I had in HR. So I actually had spent a couple of years in HR, and most people from business will shy away from HR. It's just how it is. But I have to say, it really allowed me to see it from a very different lens, see the organization in a very different lens. And also, I think for me, I saw HR as a business, but it was the business of people. And I think it's the most important business there is in any company or any organization. And one of the key things that when I first joined, I actually introduced flexible work hours, or Flexit. There was a project, I called it as Flexit. And in today's world, we are all in lockdown and pandemic, working from home has become the norm. But even just a few years ago, it was something that was unheard of, or something that was, not exactly something that a lot of people or corporations like ours, like mine, that's very traditional in their ways, would support it. So we managed to do flexible hours. You can come in staggered hours, and you also what we call compressed work week, where the Friday afternoons, if you made enough hours during the week, you could get the Friday afternoon off. Now, why I really tell this story is, like I said, I've been so fortunate to do so many, to have been exposed to so many parts of the business. But I think when I did this, and it was approved and applied in the organization, I used to get people I didn't know, random, who used to come up to me and say, thank you for doing that. You've made me happy. And I remember this one email I got from this young mother who has to travel, a good 2-3 hours every day, which is very long for somebody who's based here in Kuala Lumpur. And she was just saying, I am so happy now. I have time for myself, and I have time for for my family, and doing things that I have the ability to do things that add more meaning to my life. And I have to say that was a turning point for me, thinking, that felt really good. I mean, no billion-dollar deals that I did could top that feeling of somebody saying they're just happy. So I think that's an important element of really looking and humanizing. And, for someone like me, who's, like I mentioned, been in the corporate world for 20 years, I think I can safely say that, I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, I've seen the ugly. But I guess what I believe is glaringly missing is that realization that people are the soul of the company or the organization. And if we cannot lead people, and if we cannot see people, or if we cannot understand people, as human beings, then the tendency is for us to really operate in a very soulless environment. And when you do that, I guess, people lose meaning and purpose at work when they don't feel that they are understood. So I guess, so when I say leading in humanizing, the other big element that for me, that always stands out is we are today in a virtual, we are virtually so connected in the world today. And there is this phenomenon, everybody who says always on, and they're always connected. But I guess the key question that we really need to ask ourselves is really, are we truly connected to each other, to another human being, at that basic core of our being? And do we really understand the emotions or the state of mind of the people that we say we think we are connected to? So I guess that is where pause I see you comes into play. But before I go on, I do want to share with you, and again, those who know me know my love for Rumi, and I love the quotes, but I found this one to be really apt for today's topic. And it says, do not listen with the intent to reply, but with the intent to understand. And I think this is something, especially for me, I have observed and seen many, many times, especially at the workplace, where everyone is really just ready to pounce on someone else, or rebut at something, or put their point across and quickly challenge another person's viewpoint. And then, it becomes instinctive. It's almost automatic the way we do it. But then, a lot of the times we don't kind of just stop, pause for a bit, reflect, and kind of think a little bit and say, think about what is that person saying, and why are they saying, and thinking, why did they just say that? Or why did they do that? I mean, what are they seeing, which I do not see? So I think a lot of times we do not really put that awareness in us. And I guess for me, then it's listening to understand, then allows and provides for a very different reaction. And that really then is that turning point for us. So then, you might ask, what does this really mean? I guess listening to understand kind of provides a way to say that we really, really do care. And it allows us to see, from another person's lens, and whether we agree with them or not, whether, we may still have differences of opinion, but I think we acknowledge it and we do not react as a response. So when we are really trying to say is, I see you, is take time to understand you, and it's because I care. I do see you as the person, as an individual. So, and I mentioned the word care just now, and care on its own is a very powerful word, and it's a very impactful word. It has a very impactful meaning to it. But I kind of also wanted to expand on this with 4 equally important words, which really builds on this concept of humanizing. Now, one other quote that always sticks in my head is something that I've read, and it says, "Be kind. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle that you know nothing about." So, and I think for me that really encompasses the element of compassion, for instance. Now, compassion is really having that concern, that sensitivity towards others. You may not know, but they might be suffering, they might be going through difficulties at their end. So compassion allows us to have that level of empathy for others. And awareness is equally important because, you have that knowledge, you have that understanding of a situation or of a fact that has happened. So having that level of awareness is equally important. And of course, respect. Now, respect is, when you really give due regard to other people's feelings, to other people's, the right of others. I think it's about giving dignity to others. And that is something that's so important as well. Not just for, not just at the workplace, but just generally, we always need to give others their due respect. And I guess finally, when I think about care and the word embrace comes here, it's really to willingly accept, that you may have a difference of opinion, that you may have a different view, but at the end of the day, you are willing to embrace the other person for whatever they are and for whatever they have, or what they stand for. So I guess, when I put it in perspective, another example that I always love to talk about and share with people is just a simple example of, the cleaners or people that maybe ordinarily you don't even realize they are there at your workplace. So when you think about it, how many of us actually pay attention to people like the cleaners in the office? Do you say thank you when they come and pick up your trash? Do you realize that, if they did not pick up the trash or you did not clean the office, you're going to be working in an extremely messy and not an unhealthy environment. So they are like the engine that keeps the office working in order. But a lot of us don't acknowledge or even have that, say thank you to them, or just pause and see them. Maybe that's the other piece. And I guess the true test is when you see everyone as an extension of yourself, and they are just another human being, and they have that same beating heart, and they have that soul inside of them. So I think that ability to see somebody else is where that whole humanizing element comes into play. And I guess, when I talk, and when I go back again to the workplace, and I would talk about the human moment in organizations or companies or workplace, today we hear about us living in a digital world with automation and technological advancements, and there is so much talk about man versus machine, where we say that we're all worried whether our robots and automation going to take over some of our jobs and stuff. But I guess then the real question is, are we becoming more machine-like in our behavior towards one another? Are we behaviors? And I guess then the fundamental question that we really need to ask is really, is your focus at that right place? Is your focus at your people? Are you truly making the company a better and a happier place? Because that's where the human moment comes into play. It's when we are really aware of this aspect. And I guess, for me, it's really important then for us to just pause. And, when you pause and you reflect, that builds a real awareness inside. And think of the world we live in today, where I think none of us expected to even be in to even experience a pandemic in our lifetime. And the world has changed, and we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know where the world's going to be going. But I guess, for me personally, I thought, the pandemic was a fantastic opportunity to kind of just slow down and appreciate the finest, the simple things in life, the blessings in our lives. I mean, I don't know whether, we appreciate nature or the creation in the universe enough, where we appreciate each other enough. To me, there was that realization, and where I felt that coming back again to our of looking at each other as and humanizing each other is so critical, especially with the way the world is moving. And I guess, finally, again, I do, like I said, I do love all things Rumi. I do have this other quote that I wanted to kind of end with, but I would really say to everyone, so just pause, take time to understand yourself, take time to understand others, and take that lead in humanizing. So yeah, so this is what I have to share with you. Thank you. I'm going to pass it over, I guess, to Taruna to share your thoughts, and then I'm happy to take questions after that.
Yes, thank you, Zahira. That was really very nice to begin with, and the fact that we are all humans and we should, pause. We really need to take that pause and see the other human being and the common humanity that we have. So let me just share my screen and take this forward from what Zahira has shared with us. Okay. So yes, we are talking about Pause ICU, Leading in Humanizing, which Zahira has beautifully introduced, and with her lovely quotes on Rumi about listening and about being about the compassion that we should feel. We are all humans and we share that common humanity, and that's what we need to be working on as we are moving into this. In our world. So for me, the case for humanizing, as Zahira put it so beautifully, and said that the story where she shared with us about the woman who was coming traveling for 3 hours, and said that she feels happy and she feels a part of the organization. So I think what we can talk up here is that the fact that the human beings want to have that sense of belonging, and that that feel good kind of an environment for them to excel. And as the Center for Creative Leadership has put it, when this was in terms of when they were talking about the performance of teams and what impacts that. And they said that when trust is present, people actually step forward and do their best. They align to a common purpose, they take risks, think out of the box, and the communication is open and honest when people are experiencing trust. And when trust is absent, people are jockeying for position, hold on to information, they just play it safe and actually close up. And when we are talking about trust, it's at a level of, like, if you go into the neuroscience of it, this is at that level as to how human beings kind of interact with one another at the very moment of contact. And the trust with that they are talking about is basically when if you just to briefly talk about the neuroscience, we have the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical decision making brain, where we are more into the in our mind, and there is more mindfulness. Whereas and that's where trust resides. That's where communication opens up, when a person is feeling like that. And the other side of it is the amygdala, which is the primitive brain, which we go into when we feel that there is threat, that when I experience threat, right? And it's the chemicals that are released in those moments when we are experiencing trust. The hormones like dopamine and endorphins are released, which are the feel good happy hormones. And that's when we get into the flow of things and we are involved, engaged, and feel that we are connected, and working towards a common purpose. On the other hand, when we are in distrust, or the amygdala, there is cortisol, or the stress hormones, which are released, which completely shut everything in our system down, right? So that's where we are coming from, at that point of contact, at which we don't even realize, that I'm trusting a person or not trusting a person, or opening up in a conversation, happens at 0.7 seconds of when we are in contact with somebody or a stimulus. So that's where it starts, right? And to take Zahira's point forward, right? That we are living in a very different situation right now. Again, the world is becoming very, very diverse. Um, People want be becoming diverse in the sense that right now, when we talk about inclusion or diversity, as Zahira mentioned, it's not just about race and gender. It's much beyond that. We have to look at people, how they are identifying themselves, what are they relating to, and then we have to take into consideration our relationship with the intersections that we identify ourselves with. So it's not as simple as a human being is complex, and we are coming in with a lot of stories within us. And then at the workplace, people really want to belong. We bring our whole self to the organization, and we expect that sense of belonging as well from the organization that we are working for. There is also a direct correlation between employee engagement and performance at a team level, or a group level, and then it also impacts the bottom line, right, in the profit. Companies that will, going back into that aspect, if the companies and organizations which those who will work towards inclusive cultures and building inclusive cultures, they have a competitive edge over us, over the other companies, which will probably stick to the way we have been dealing with things, where we, as you know, we are kind of too caught up in ourselves, and we are not actually aware of what's going on with the other person and what's going on within us as well. So we really, to move forward and to humanize organizations, we really need to build an inclusive culture, that's so to speak. And then, so that's what it is for me. Humanizing the workplace is definitely just creating an inclusive culture, right? And when we talk about inclusion, it's much deeper than just a representation or the numbers in terms of the diversity we talk about. That's the way, traditionally we have been talking about diversity and inclusion. We have an X number of gender, the race, and all of those things. But in fact, that is not really having the impact that we are looking for. So for the inclusive culture, actually, we have to keep in mind we cannot ignore the identity, or the unique traits that each one of us individually brings in terms of our, how, what we identify with, what I belong to, how I see things, and so all of these unique traits of my belief system, my what are my assumptions, what are my biases or the stereotypes that I'm coming with. As a leader, I have to be aware of those, and every individual also brings that entire set. As a leader, I have to be aware of that as well. And if there is belonging, if the employees are feeling that they belong, and they are happy, that's the experience that they have at the workplace. That is a sign that yes, this is an inclusive culture that they are in. So there has to be a 360 approach to inclusive culture building in an organization, starting with the self. You have to become aware of what's going on within you, and then you have to also be aware of what the other person is feeling, and the organization as a whole will then move in that direction. So like as Aishwarya said, in one of the interviews that I did recently with the women, was on diversity and inclusion, and they all, the common thread or the common thing that came out was that the diversity or the inclusion and inclusive culture cannot be the responsibility of one, the HR or the one department, but the entire organization and individual has to work towards it. So that to me is humanizing, when we are able to build that belonging and a sense of identity for the people, right? What is a leader's role? Leaders they lead, and they have to lead in this humanizing of the organization. And for that, the very first thing is that they need to be vulnerable and ready, and they need to have that courage and vulnerability, because when they start building when they start having those conversations around having inclusion in the organization, probably the leader will get to know or hear of things which they are not expecting to hear. So they have to be open to that. Again, they have to be open to listening, to hearing all those responses that are coming to them, and they have to be ready to embark on that journey of exploring themselves first. What are they, how open are they, as you said, right? How aware are we of people around us? So some of the people we don't even notice, and we are always in that mode of telling people, and that shift towards, not telling but asking people, and having a shared discovery with them, and co-creating what people want. I think that's the direction, and that's the role of a leader, to lead as a coach, right? I, being from the coaching industry, and when we talk about inclusion, what it takes me back to is that you really need to have those developmental, those important open coaching conversations with people, right? And when, because that's the environment we as coaches create for our client. We are non-judgmental, we are creating trust for them, right? We are discovering with them, we are encouraging new awareness in our client. That's what the role of a coach is. And I believe that to create that inclusive culture, to be able to pause and see the other human being who's sitting across, we actually need to have those kind of coaching conversations, which will get the other person to also open up, right? um, and last, so these are basically the constructs of inclusion, where, just a brief on that the person feels there's a sense of belonging, the person experiences fairness, there are enough opportunities and resources available to each person, they are part of the decision making, they have a voice in, and they are able to give their opinions, and they feel that sense of contribution to a broader purpose, right? As Zahira also mentioned, that's the common purpose that we have. We can, so for inclusive culture, these are the things that you consider, and then as terms of going forward, you can create an action plan around each of them in your organizations. It's it is a long road. It's not easy, as I'm sure Zaira would also agree with me, that when we talk about creating diversity, inclusion, and equity in an organization, it involves a lot of the complete organization to be involved in it, individuals to be involved in it. So we need to be leading by design, and that's where I am at. That's the humanizing and inclusiveness for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Taruna and Zahira, for a very different perspective. Yeah. So we are now open to questions, and I have one question by Rajiv Ranjan. That's a question for Taruna. What needs to be done to improve trust at the workplace? My experience has been that there will always be some level of distrust in any organization.
Right. So sorry, I didn't get the name.
Rajiv Ranjan.
Rajiv. Okay. Hi, Rajiv. Rajiv, you're so right that it's not easy. There will always be something. It's not easy to create trust in any case, and especially when you look at it, or from that perspective of the level at which the trust is formed or distrust happens, which is at a very individual inner core of the person that happens. The one way that you can probably move towards creating that trust is through the conversations that you are having, or the environment that you're creating as a leader. When you are available to the person, you're having those conversations as a coach, of actively listening to them, making them feel that trust, which is at a very subtle level of how you are having that conversation with the person, the non-judgmental, moving away from telling people to do a certain way towards uh, shared. So when you ask them how, or what's their opinion on that. So in fact, like recently there was a coaching conversation that I was having, and the person was saying, I'm not able to create a rapport, or I'm not able to create trust in my with my team, team members. It's not easy for me. And he had certain assumptions around that, that what it, so if I am doing that, then people will think of me as being too soft, or people will think of me as, not not getting my work done. So those kind of things. So what all I and he said, how you start the conversation is, no, I straight away go into talking about my work. So through the discussion, like he himself came to the point that, no, maybe I should have some rapport building questions. I should ask some very common questions about his life and about how things are going around, going for him. And when he went and tested it, and he came back and he said, yes, that really worked. So his assumption was that if I, as a leader, am talking to people, I'm showing my vulnerability, or I'm showing something which is not which people are not looking at. But to get rid of those assumptions and just open up and have open conversations, open up to the idea of the other person being a human and has that life, would probably help to slowly build that trust within your team and organization at a much, much larger level. So to cut it short, I think it is the conversations, the kind of conversation that you have.
Thank
Rajiv, I
you.
hope it supported you. Thank you.
Thank you, Taruna. Zahira, just for you, how did you humanize letting people go at times of recession or because of a performance review?
Thank you for that question. I think it comes from Chandra Kitu. Thank you. I mean, I think, I think that's the point about humanizing, right? It is not saying that you are going to give everybody whatever they need. I mean, at the end of the day, we all have to make tough decisions and tough choices. And as an organization, when times are tough, you do have to let people go. Or whether, when you talk about performance review, I always say it's not because that person is a failure, but sometimes it's about a mismatch, right? That you so for me, my I always believe we have to set people up for success. And setting people up for success doesn't mean that everyone is going to be right for a job or right for a role, but it's always that understanding is, are you that right match? And if you are not, then I think it's okay to let people go. But I think you can do it in a very dignified manner, in a very respectful manner. You do not have to, you know, and I always believe also, I always say that, there's no such things as failures and successes. There's always learnings and successes, because, it's not about how do you turn it around, and how do you learn from it. And that's the real, and that's the beauty of doing it. So I think it's about changing that narrative and how we approach people. Because if you have to, I mean, there will be tough choices to make. We all do, whether it's in our professional capacity or in our personal capacity. But it's about doing it in the right manner, and you're giving the other person that due respect. So that's the way I would look at it.
Okay. Thank you, Zahira, for that. Sudarshan wants to know, Taruna, what do you mean by lead by design?
Okay, so lead by design, actually, Sudarshan, basically for me, it is see, the ability to make those shifts and changes lies within us, whether it is on for our professional personal self, and also for our professional self. All we need to, what we've been learning, the change, and to sustain it and to make it real, it needs step by step action, right? It doesn't happen in one go. So you design how you want to lead, you design how you want to become that more inclusive person or the more inclusive leader. And it is your own, individually you design how you want to be that leader, and also putting it in perspective of the organization itself moves with a design. So in the sense that you plan it out and you move in that direction. um, that's what I mean when I say that you lead by design as well, in terms of the inclusive culture that we are talking about here.
Thank you. And there's another one from Johnny. When we say inclusiveness, are we not coming from exclusion? So why exclusion in the first place?
Okay, right.
So whoever first?
I
Yeah, go ahead, Taruna.
right.
I can take it.
Okay, so see, I think that the fact is that we all do experience exclusion to begin with, right? And when we are that's what is happening in our workplaces, in our life as such. And so to kind of accept that that is happening in many ways, even when if there are there are, sorry, so what I'm trying to say is that that exists, exclusion, and how we kind of exclude people, is actually existing because of our the biases or assumptions that we are making within ourselves. There are a lot of different people. At a human level we are different. At a human level, individual level, we are, every being is different. We identify with different things. Even for the same issue, there will be a different response to that, right? So we are all very different, and I would say it's the differences, and that we are focusing on right now. So when we say inclusiveness, it's basically to recognize that we have those differences, and then move towards focusing more on our similarity and making it a more inclusive place or a world that we are in. So exclusion does exist whether we like it or not.
Absolutely. In fact, Vivek Sharma is saying the first place is inclusiveness, not practicing that leads to exclusion. All right.
Yeah.
So, Zahira, a question for you. Humanizing is seen as not demanding, meeting targets. Your advice on how to get that acceptance. This is from Ramarao.
Sorry, advice on how to get acceptance on humanizing, do you mean?
Yes, correct. Because humanizing is considered or is viewed as not demanding because the focus is on meeting targets. So, how do you get that acceptance?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the most important thing, and I do say, why I always said that, actually organizations or companies or businesses don't make strategies. People do. Organizations or business don't deliver performance. People do. So I think that is that real, that's where I say we have to really think about the way we look at an organization. The organization is as good as the people that are inside it. And that's where, if you don't allow people to, you don't allow people to have purpose, and meaning in their work, you're not going to be able to, then deliver the performance, which ultimately drives those profits and the targets and the objectives you want to meet. So I think this is where, that role modeling is so key. And of course, in an ideal world, it would be great if the highest and the topmost leadership shows that, role models those values. But, we live, unfortunately, we live in a world that's not perfect and that's not ideal. But I think I always say, do not underestimate the power and influence that you have and your sphere of influence around you. There is so much things that you can do. I can share another story. When I was running the transformation program, for Petronas for the talent ecosystem. Now, I work in a very traditional and like you, Ashwarya, you know where the Petronas Towers is. It's a very formal office. You've got to dress up and all. And I really needed to humanize it. So, what did I do? I went out of the towers and found an office that I could allow my guys to dress down, have color. You can see that I love color. They can draw on the walls. They can do whatever they want. But I'm close enough to go back to the headquarters when I need to. So I'm just saying, there's so much level of influence that you can do. Never underestimate the power you have to make a change. Yeah, that would be my answer.
So Adora has a statement saying a client shared his challenge in working in an extremely fast-paced and fast-pressured environment. He feels that if they are to achieve their goals, co-creating with much less experienced or skilled colleagues will work against him. Any thoughts on this? Zaira, you can take it.
Yeah. Well, again, I guess the whole point is, this notion that others are going to bring you down or others are going to derail you. And I think that is the point. Have you paused and seen the other person? you know I genuinely believe people don't come to work with this intention of destroying value. I think of course there might be some outliers, but I think all of us really go to work to do an honest day's job, to bring value. I don't think we do it just because we are out to get others. But I think that's where that understanding of one another. You can't, and we work in a collaborative environment at the workplace. You can't do it alone. Nobody knows. Even the best CEOs and the smartest people cannot do it on their own. You need to have that teamwork. You need to have the collaboration. So if you don't know how to work and bring others along the journey, you're not going to get that far in the end. So to me, it's very important. You do have to invest in other people, and you have to do it with that real willingness to know that at the end of the day, you are going to grow, but they are also going to grow. And like I said, it's if there are people who are mismatched for a role, then by all means have those conversations, but bring people along. And I think that's important, because once you have that acceptance, they will go all out to deliver for you. Yeah.
And I think it's also the own personal bias, right? I mean, if I'm biased that the person who's less experienced or less skilled will not add value to me or will bring me down, it's my own personal bias as a leader rather than the other person.
Right.
Of course, definitely.
Right. And see, I think, and he's right also when he's saying, when they're talking about it, the fact that, you have to meet those targets, and you are ultimately responsible for that, for meeting that target. But that's what actually holds us back from giving the more responsibility to the other person, or letting them, or at least even testing whether they are able to do it. Unless we give it to them, we won't know whether they are able to do it or not. Right. So, as Ira said, yes, you've got to trust that, and take them along. And I do understand when they're saying that the target has to be met and I'm responsible for it. But it's about being that, just being open. And when you give others an opportunity, they usually will live up to it and will do it. So, yeah. So that's what I just wanted to add to that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Is there any other question from anybody? Because I don't see that. I don't see any more questions. Any more questions from anybody? I personally like your CARE acronym, Zahira. Is it a standard acronym or is it something
Thank
which
you.
is you devised it?
No standards. I have no, it's just something that comes along while we were looking at care. But yeah, at the end of the day, all these words, they all have the same. To me, it all drives the message home of just looking at each other and feeling that that connectivity with each other at a human level. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So I don't see any more questions. Thank you so much for joining in the webinar today. This is the last one we are having in this year. I'm posting a link for the CCUs in the chat box. Kindly copy this link, save the link, and submit the form within the next 24 hours. And I will be sharing your CCUs at the end of November next year. So we will compile all the CCUs for the whole year from December to November, and we will give it at that time. So kindly do that. Once again, I post the link in the chat box. Yeah. And thank you, Zahira and Taruna, for doing this for us today. Really, really grateful and really appreciate. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Wherever you are, whichever part of the world all of you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thanks, Aishwarya. Thank you, Zahira. Really loved it. Thank you.
Thanks, Taruna.
Bye-bye.
Bye.